Karen's obsession with control had reached a new, almost comical level. This time, the HOA had invited a real estate agent to tour my lodge, claiming it was being considered for sale. The audacity of the act left me momentarily speechless. How could they imagine that they had any authority to market my private property? But beneath the initial disbelief, I saw the opportunity for yet another strategic demonstration of authority, foresight, and clever leverage. The first step was preparation. I secured all entry points, ensuring that every door, window, and gate was reinforced and monitored. I installed additional cameras, strategically positioned to capture every interaction. The paths inside the lodge were configured with motion sensors and automated alerts, and every room contained documentation of ownership, permits, and legal authority. Karen might have imagined she could surprise me, but the lodge was already a fortress of foresight. The morning of the tour arrived. The real estate agent, unaware of the full context, approached the lodge with a small entourage, including Karen. I calmly greeted them at the entrance, my demeanor neutral but assertive. "I understand you've been invited for a tour," I said. "Let me clarify. This property is neither for sale nor subject to any HOA approval. All access is strictly by invitation." Karen's face turned pale. She had assumed that the mere presence of a professional agent would confer legitimacy to her audacious claim. Instead, she was confronted with absolute authority. I provided documentation of property ownership, legal deeds, and prior rulings affirming that any attempt to market or sell the lodge without my consent was not only invalid but legally actionable. The real estate agent, sensing the tension and authority in the room, quickly realized the error and retreated politely. Karen, however, refused to leave quietly. She attempted to argue, citing HOA guidelines, bylaws, and imagined permissions. Every point she raised was methodically countered with evidence. Deeds, survey maps, and recorded property boundaries left her with no ground to stand on. To reinforce the lesson, I transformed the encounter into a display of both legal and strategic foresight. I installed temporary no-access signs on the lodge, linked to automated alerts that notified me of any attempt to bypass them. Every step of the interior, previously accessible, was now secured with smart locks and motion-sensitive cameras. Any unauthorized entry would immediately trigger documentation, legal notice, and potential civil penalties. Karen's imagined authority over the property had been transformed into a clear demonstration of her impotence. Neighbors and local observers, who had grown increasingly interested in the ongoing saga, began taking note. Karen's repeated attempts to assert control over private property were now public spectacles, reinforcing my authority and her inability to enforce arbitrary whims. Her credibility, once inflated by imagined HOA power, diminished further with each failed attempt. I also decided to convert the situation into a financial opportunity. Rather than merely blocking access, I organized legitimate tours for vetted clients and visitors, turning the lodge into a controlled, profitable showcase. Every intrusion or attempt by Karen to assert authority now highlighted the contrast between prepared strategy and reckless overreach. By the end of the day, the lodge was fully secured, legally reinforced, and operational under my control. Karen had attempted to manipulate perception, influence a real estate transaction, and assert authority, but her efforts only underscored her lack of preparation and my foresight. Every camera, lock, and piece of documentation had transformed her audacity into a public lesson on the limits of assumed power. As I walked through the lodge that evening, observing the meticulous arrangements, the secure entrances, and the strategically positioned monitoring systems, I reflected on a simple truth. Control is not about threats or imagined authority. It is about preparation, foresight, and the ability to convert every intrusion into a demonstration of strength. Karen had tried to manipulate my property, but the result was the exact opposite. The lodge was safer, stronger, and more secure than ever before, and her repeated failures only enhanced my strategic position.